Is God trustworthy? Hi, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Mary Beth.
Join us as we seek to answer this question through wholehearted conversation.
Discover the wit and wisdom that comes from being anchored in Christ and connected to one another.
This is Trustworthy. Well, Happy New Year, Mary Beth.
Happy New Year, Sarah.
I have a question for you.
You always do.
Yes.
Let's hear it.
Should old acquaintance be forgot?
Should or should not it be forgot? That is the question.
I think there are some old acquaintances that I'm happy to forget.
I hope you're not referring to me.
No,
I'm a newer acquaintance.
You're a newer acquaintance. And even if you're an older acquaintance, I would never forget you.
Oh, thank you so much.
People come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
There you go.
I hope you're all three.
Okay. I'll accept that. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
What does Auld Lang Syne mean?
Let's look it up.
Auld Lang Syne meaning times long past.
There we go.
Appropriate for the end of one year and the beginning of a next.
Very appropriate.
What a year 2024 has been for us.
Yeah.
We made a podcast.
We did make a podcast. Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of fun. It's New Year's Eve when this is airing. I like New Year's Eve because there's this level of excitement. You get to get out all the Christmas cookie leftovers. Actually, I usually set aside some choice Christmas cookies in the freezer, especially for New Year's Eve.
That was very intentional.
Oh, yes. Whenever I make my cookies, I make up a special tray for New Year's Eve and freeze it so that it won't be like the broken pieces of cookies, stale kind of things, but like a fresh little display of cookies just for New Year's Eve. I like to have friends over, play games, watch the ball drop, drink some bubbly.
Do you watch the New Year's Rockin' Eve?
I typically switch back and forth. I used to always like to watch Dick Clark back in the day, but I do still watch the Rockin' Eve, but I do switch to some of the other. I think Nashville's had one the last few years that I've enjoyed checking in on. So I kind of flip back and forth. And it's not that I'm sitting in front of the TV the whole night. It's just sort of on in the background and we check on it. But when it comes time for the ball to drop, we watch New York.
Yeah.
Because that's the time zone we live in.
Have you ever gone to the mushroom drop in Kennett Square?
I have not.
Dear listeners, in our sweet little hometown here, we are the mushroom capital of the world. Most of you know that because you live here if you're listening. But for those who don't, there is a lighted mushroom.
Lighted mushroom.
That they drop downtown. I think when the boys get a little older, we'll have to go at least once. So they can stay up till midnight and see the mushroom drop. I feel like it's like a rite of passage if you live in Kennett Square.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of cities have that sort of thing.
Yeah.
In Lancaster, they had a rose. Because there's a red rose city.
Oh, I never knew that.
Lancaster. Yeah. Lancaster, Pennsylvania is the red rose city and York, Pennsylvania is the white rose city. Yes.
I'm learning a lot today.
Yes, you are. And because they were named for the houses of Lancaster and York. So there's always sort of this rivalry going on between those two cities. It's fun.
That is fun. I was telling Sarah before we started recording that New Year's Eve in my 40s looks drastically different than it did in my 20s. Now I sometimes don't even make it to midnight.
I was shocked to learn that. As your kids get a little older, they will start asking to stay up and then you'll have to stay up. That's what happened with my son.
Yeah. We've got a nice little lull right now before the late nights begin again.
Enjoy it while you can.
Yeah. I like the markings of time and schedules and things that mark the change of seasons. I thrive well in that kind of structure, but I'm not a huge New Year's Eve celebrator.
I like New Year's Eve. It's always a time to have some extra celebration. I like to celebrate.
One time I went to a friend's party. This is when I was in my 20s. At some other friend's apartment, and my ride, we went out to get in our car, and her car had been towed. So that was a very eventful New Year's Eve, because then, or no, I guess we both drove separately, because I drove her to the tow lot. So that was the first thing I did that year, was go to the tow lot and help my friend get her car back in the middle of the night.
That's an auspicious start.
Right. Same friend I had met up with at a coffee shop. I can't remember if this was before or after the New Year's thing. And I parked somewhere where I knew I wasn't supposed to park. And we came out and my car was in the process of getting towed. And we flagged the tow truck down and we're like,
Wow.
please stop.
That's funny.
Yep.
No, I think it's fun to get all dressed up and have a sparkly earrings and sparkly outfit and sparkly champagne glasses.
Very festive, celebratory,
very festive.
Starting off the year on a high note.
Well, and maybe one of the reasons why I like New Year's Eve so much is because for my young adult life, I was working in a car dealership, and we always closed early on New Year's Eve and had off New Year's Day. And especially if those days happened to fall on not a weekend, then I got extra days off of work. So I probably was happy to celebrate that. So that could be very formative when you're given extra time off of work.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. So for our first New Year's Eve as trustworthy podcast co-hosts, I thought it would be good for us to just kind of take a moment and look back on the past year. 2024 was the beginning of our podcast, and we started out very simply with an iPhone recording a conversation, which ended up being our pilot. And then we got some fancy microphones and some recording equipment. Who knows what this coming year is going to bring for the podcast?
That's right.
More fancy equipment.
We'll get a sponsor to build us an actual studio.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe I'll just invest in a better computer. So let's take a look back. We made some changes this second season, and we brought in some guests, did some interviews. That was fun.
It was fun. And now that I'm thinking about it, we actually got to talk with quite a wide variety of guests.
We really did.
Maybe we should chat about like some of our favorite ones that stood out to us.
Do you remember the time we talked to Lucia?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Lucia Prato. She is actually the proprietor,
One of those.
Female proprietor.
Female business owner.
Female business owner. Yes. Shout out, right? Of the Channel Z Biscotti Bakery.
Best bakery around.
Absolutely. Well, they now have a location in, I can't say the word, Fiumicino. Anyway, I don't know, whatever. In the airport, Rome, whatever. But, well, what was the most surprising thing that you learned in that interview? Hey, listeners. Mary Beth and I have the perfect antidote to holiday stress. Listening to our podcast while enjoying your favorite beverage. I say coffee, she says tea. Either one is fine. Just make sure you listen to Trustworthy.
Yeah, I was fascinated to learn how they came up with the name for the bakery, because Channel Z and Biscotti, to me, I was like, can you just talk about how those kind of go together?
Right.
And her explanation of that, if you remember, that was pretty fascinating.
It all really went back to when she was starting to learn English, and she had discovered, one of my favorite bands, the B-52s, and listened to the song Channel Z, and really, instead of knowing what the English words were, she just thought they were talking about biscotti, which is funny. Did you know that biscotti, it is just actually like a biscuit? It's like a cookie or a cracker in Italy. It's not what we think of as biscotti. The biscotti that we think of as biscotti, that hard little cookie, which is what we're talking about, is actually called Biscotti di Prato, because that is the town that it was made in. and it's unique to that area. And it's become like in English speaking countries, oh, biscotti, it's that cookie. But if you say biscotti in Italy, they're like, yeah, what are you talking about? Do you want a cracker?
I never knew that.
Yeah. So, but I think the thing that I was most interested to learn, my version of biscotti is a lot more involved because I usually add dried fruits and all sorts of things. And really the basic recipe and the reason why it's shelf stable for so long is it's just flour, sugar, a little bit of egg and water. And they do put in salt and pine nuts and almonds. And then you can add like some lemon zest.
Now, what was she saying that makes theirs different at their bakery? They have like their own little spin.
They do have their own little spin. So when they do, so you bake it twice. It's a twice baked cookie. So you do like the long loaf sort of thing. You bake that. And then you slice them and then bake the slices. But when they slice them, they score each biscotti with a Z.
Oh, yeah. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can say, really, as you eat it, oh, I love my biscotti scored with a Z.
She was such a great guest. I
She
learned
really
so
was.
much about food and music. That was,
and I
she
could
was
just
fun.
listen to her Italian accent. Just, oh,
Right? Makes me want to go back to Italy for sure.
it makes me want a biscotti. I do love it.
Mentioning the B-52s, that reminded me, remember when we chatted with the Duga girls?
Oh, that was a high energy interview.
They are amazing. So they're this group from the 60s that were so popular when doo-wop and Motown and all these types of music were coming up. And then, you know, as things go in the music industry, things kind of fizzled out for them. But then they started this reunion tour like 2 years ago because they're now, I mean, I don't want to out them, but they're not young anymore.
I think there's literally like a group geriatric doctor that travels with them.
yeah,
and
smart,
they
yeah.
have behind the curtains is a walker and all that
Yeah.
sort of thing. But did you know the caps, things they're wearing on their heads are the original ones
Nice.
from their group?
They're so cute. And they wore them here, like to the studio.
I know.
And they all dressed the same. They had their whole outfits going. It was amazing. And they were talking about, remember they're talking about new dance moves that they're trying to incorporate in their reunion tour since they started out in the 60s and now they're kind of doing this new thing.
Try to connect with Gen Z.
That's right. They're trying to bring in a younger audience kind of in their golden years to carry on the traditions of the Duga girls. And so one of the things they're learning is the Dougie, which now is honestly like a few years old.
Right.
So we'll see what they learn next. I was trying to think of things we could flag for them to be like, hey, you should incorporate this in your show.
Like flossing, twerking, dabbing. I don't know.
Some of them might throw out their backs trying some of that, but
This is true.
they were so entertaining. And I think just to hear their story of how they became so famous, even though they were misunderstood at first.
Yeah.
And just that redemption story of even if you're misunderstood, it doesn't mean the end
Right.
of your career. It can actually start something new.
Well, and I think too, sometimes misunderstandings can lead to that sort of new experience or that new place. Sometimes change happens because there's a misunderstanding.
That's right.
Yeah.
So if you see the Duga girls come into your town,
Buy tickets.
that's right. Check out that reunion show.
Absolutely. It's so much fun.
Yep.
I mean, it's 45 minutes and it's usually at 4:00.
That's right.
That's okay. It's worth it.
That's right.
It's worth it. Hey, you know what's great about the 4:00 and 45 minute? You can still get in for the early bird special before 6 after the show.
You could get some biscotti and a coffee.
Absolutely. There you go. All right. Speaking of misunderstood.
What else are you remembering?
Well, I'm remembering Miss Underfoot, who was our guest, probably the most disturbing guest we've had.
It was kind of a dark episode.
It was a dark episode.
Heavy.
Yeah, it was heavy. And Miss Underfoot actually lives in my house in the same place as the studio, which is, again, a little disturbing, but it just really came about very organically. I had been sorting through Christmas decorations in the basement, getting things ready. I start very early because of all the hosting that we do. The biggest party we have is usually at the beginning of December. So we need to start early. And I saw this Miss Underfoot and kind of freaked out. And shockingly enough, she's like, hey, I just want to let you know that this really hurts my feelings. And I was like, okay, a bug just talked to me.
Yeah. Mind blown.
Yeah. So she's a house centipede, which again, I'm not really a fan of centipedes because they remind me of other creatures. Anyway, she was pretty disappointed because she always sees the hustle and bustle, the gifts, the decorations coming in out of the basement, all the planning. And she really was feeling left out and let me know it. You know, when you have a conversation with those people that, and I think you noticed this as we were interviewing her, but I think she has an inferiority complex.
Yeah.
I think that's like, if I was, and I know we're not medical professionals or psychologists or anything like that, but if I had to give it a name, I think that would be it. Because she constantly was saying things like, well, even though I'm eating like all of these nasty bugs and things in your house, I just know that I'm not doing my part. I know that there are other centipedes that do a better job of keeping the nasty pests away. And like, I just don't always measure up. And I was like, okay, like nobody said that you weren't doing a good job. Like, and I have to admit that like, I didn't even really know that she was doing that for me.
Right.
And so definitely misunderstood.
Well, which is something that all of us could relate to from that interview. Was there things that we do that maybe other people don't realize or don't recognize in our own lives? And the fact that she was brave enough to voice that, I really respected her for that.
That's true. Although she did kind of freak out. And I was like, well, like, no offense, but you look kind of creepy. And she just like went off, which I guess that was not the right thing to say. I mean, I do feel bad. I'm sorry, Miss Underfoot. Public apology right now.
Yeah. If she's listening to this episode.
Which she is.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Or she will. And I guess I do want to say that it's worth getting to know people before you make a judgment call.
Or before you step on them.
Well, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to step all over Miss Underfoot and her kin.
That's right.
But giving them the time and the space to express kind of how they're feeling about their situation. And it's good to understand what people do for you. You know, you got to look out for the little guy. So maybe I will think about including her in my Christmas list at some point.
Yeah.
Well, it was a good thing that we did not interview Miss Underfoot the same day that we had one of our other guests.
Oh, are you thinking about the turkey?
I am.
Yeah, that could have been nasty.
Yeah, could have had an unhappy ending.
That's right. No violence here on the Trustworthy podcast.
No, not at all.
But I really enjoyed our chat with the pardoned turkey.
Mm-hmm.
They actually brought along their pal to the interview because in retrospect, looking back at that episode now, I think I didn't realize ahead of time that now there's actually 2 pardoned turkeys every year that the president does, not just one. And so they, he had to like give a shout out to his buddy that was with him.
Yeah. This was Franklin. Fun. Franklin was the one that we interviewed and he brought Benny with him.
Yeah, I think that's right. Franklin and Benny. And to me, it was just such a, peek behind the curtain of what happens at the White House. And I think it's so fun for our listeners to hear what the turkeys get to see and do the day that they're pardoned. And they don't even know what's happening. That was the part that blew my mind. They travel from Minnesota, where they live, to the White House, and they don't know where they're going. Their owners don't tell them. Then they show up at the White House. That part of the story like blew my mind.
Well, and I guess this would be probably the first time they're on a plane.
Yeah. And, they see their other friends leave and never come back. And so they don't know what's happening.
They probably assume the worst.
Yeah. And so to get to, walk around in the White House and meet the president and have a whole speech given in your honor, it really changed their life. And so to hear about, how that really changed their lives and this kind of once in a lifetime experience and now how they're, advocating for other people to, just pick your head up. You don't know what's going to happen to you. Look around. They're on this whole kind of campaign now, which is fascinating to watch, which all that really happened soon after our interview. So it's been fun to kind of keep up with them.
I'm not going to lie. I'm going to say that I kind of feel a little responsible for that whole thing. Because I feel like if we hadn't had them on the podcast,
That's right.
to give them a turkey platform that
people may not know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they would maybe not have had the gumption to move forward with.
That's right. I mean, they got the rights to Freebird. And so now that is their song that they can play whenever they make appearances. I mean, talk about making it big.
I know.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So they are back home in Minnesota. I just heard from them recently. They've had quite a tour the past, couple of months here since being pardoned. And I'm curious to see what happens for them in
It'll be
2025.
really interesting. Yeah. So we'll just give, shout out to Franklin and Benny. Happy New Year, dudes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
All right. I don't know. I mean, I really enjoyed Lucia, as I said. I really admire her, just the way she's expanding the Channel Z brand. But one of the other interviewees that I probably identified most with was the basic fall girl. I think the thing that really connected me to her situation was that feeling of wanting to set the record straight. And I know that we've been able to do that a couple times, sometimes in a joking manner, but seriously just say, hey, I don't really mean to make you feel like you're inadequate. Like in my case, I was like, I really just want to help. And so sometimes my advice is too much. But in her case, she just wanted to say, hey, it wasn't me. It really wasn't me. And just to have to live with the weight of taking the fall for everything.
Over and over and over
again.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't understand how one person could be blamed for so many things.
And she just keeps going. She keeps trying.
Yeah.
She keeps putting herself out there. Because, I mean, this started back when she was like in high school?
I think so. Or junior high or something. Yeah. I think, was it the fire alarm or was it the nail polish? What was the first thing?
I think the fire alarm was first because she was talking about how she was so confused about it because she wasn't even at school that day. And the fire alarm went off at school and the sprinkler system started going.
Yes.
And so they said a student had done a prank and pulled the fire alarm.
Yeah.
And she was at a doctor's appointment or something when it happened.
Yeah.
And all of her friends blamed it on her.
Blamed it on her. Yeah. Well, former friends.
That's right.
Let's
friends
be
at the
clear.
time.
Friends at the time. Ugh, that's
and so
tough.
she had to take the fall for it.
Ugh.
And that just set up this repeated pattern in her life.
And then she got detention. She wasn't even in school. And then that just mind-boggling because the police came to her house to look for her because of the shoplifting incident with the 99 bottles of nail polish, the Wet and Wild.
Yep.
The girls had gone and stolen them from Rite Aid and blamed it on her. She was at home serving out of school suspension or whatever it was. And the police
for the fire alarm incident.
Yeah. Talk about adding insult to injury.
Yeah.
But somehow she persevered. She went to college and actually got kicked out the third semester she was there, her first semester of her sophomore year, because again, someone had stolen the test key from the proctor and put it in her dorm room. And when they did a search.
Yeah, the honor council, somebody tried to frame her. And so they searched her room and found it. She, of course, had no idea how it got there. I mean, that's pretty serious once you get to college level and, that can threaten the future of your education.
But somehow she made it through. She got out of that one too.
And what was it that she kind of has like a mantra, a phrase, a thing that she kind of lives by that helps her get through these? What was that? Do you remember what she said?
Let me think. I want to get her words exactly right here. If not me, then who?
That's right. That's right.
I mean, it's a great rhetorical question, but I think it's also like a challenge for her. She's like, you know what? People will end up being convicted someday. They will end up feeling the weight of what they've done. And if it's not me to stand in the gap, to take the blame, then who? But I will say, I mean, I would not be able to take that stance. I would be so angry. Just the story. Oh my gosh. Just this. It was like what, in September of this year, she went on a girls' weekend, New York City, the whole nine, Madison Avenue, Fifth Avenue, shopping, whatever. And they were in that little boutique in the fashion district.
Oh, looking at dresses.
Yeah. You know how they have the samples sale, but some of those are still really expensive. And one of her friends, and listeners, you can't see this, but I like have air quotes going here. One of her friends had tried on one of these gowns, Diane von Furstenberg. I don't know who it was, but it was like a $2,000 gown, even at the sample sale, and got lipstick on it. It was like, how do you say that? Ecru?
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah. With this gorgeous feather beading with like, I don't know. She described this dress to me. It sounded amazing. But anyway, she had gone in, she had picked up like some sort of like scarf. I think it was like alpaca. Not alpaca, cashmere scarf.
Yeah, like a cashmere. Yeah.
And she paid for it and left. And she was in the cafe down the street. And then next day she looks at her statement and there's a $2,000 charge from this little boutique. And it turns out that one of the girls tried on the dress, got the lipstick on it. And then when the sales clerk brought it up, they're like, oh, it was her. So they
weren't going to buy it, right?
No, they weren't going to buy it. Well, so what happened was they're like, oh, it was, my friend, whatever. So they already had her debit card on file from the cashmere scarves and they charged her $2,000 out of her checking account. And do you remember what she said, what happened to the dress? They damaged it out and gave it to the friends. Yeah. So this girl that got the lipstick on it and lied about it
got the dress.
$2,000 von Furstenberg sample and didn't even pay for it.
And basic fall girl
took the fall again. Oh,
what a life she has lived.
Yeah. Anyway, we should start a GoFundMe for her.
Yeah, maybe we should.
I feel like people would. I mean, I would get $5 to that.
Right? At least enough to reimburse the dress.
Yeah. Oh, poor girl.
Yep. Well, one of the more upbeat interviews we did.
Oh, yeah. This was so much fun.
Yeah.
This was just a couple weeks ago.
That's right. It was just in one of our recent episodes was Mr. Nutcracker, which who doesn't love a nutcracker at Christmas time? It was such a fun interview.
Did he say we can call him Woody? Is that okay?
I mean, I think maybe we can to his face, but I don't know if like in our episode should we?
That. Yeah, because it's kind of okay. Let's not. Okay, Mr. Nutcracker.
We'll keep it formal for the podcast.
Yes,
but when we're just hanging out with him, we can call him Woody. So just his story of kind of being your typical nutcracker. He's doing his day job. He's helping people shell and crack nuts, especially around the holidays. It gets really busy working in the nut factory. And especially this time of year, on top of that, he also performs in the local ballet. And so he's kind of this, modern day Renaissance man,
man about town,
hands-on worker who also dances ballet. And then why we had him on the show was he's added on to even those responsibilities because he's heard about how live Christmas trees have become more and more popular. And he is now a lobbyist for artificial Christmas trees. And his whole platform, he goes to Washington, D.C., he visits lawmakers. You may have seen him on cable news. He's been doing a lot of interviews the past month, is pointing out that the purchase of live Christmas trees is actually damaging the nutcracker population. There is a shortage of trees available for the nutcracker population, and he is creating a platform for himself to talk to people in spheres of influence about this and to raise awareness.
That's amazing. I'd really admire that. I think that when you can find a cause that is so integral to your being that it just sort of fuels your passion and just lights a fire for the future.
That's right. Hopefully a fire that will not devastate these trees that he is advocating about. But the other thing that was fun about chatting with him is he was telling us kind of the different types of trees. It just gets so nuanced that like a lot of things do, right? And there are certain trees that are good for helping the nutcracker population. And so it was an interesting idea that he posed. And I don't know how this is going to fly, but the fact that people should, instead of using, kind of your evergreens, your pine trees, your fir trees for live Christmas trees, he was saying that people should use palm trees only all across the world as Christmas trees. And I don't know if that's going to take off or not, but we'll see what happens.
I thought we already had problems with the palm trees, with the palm oil and the.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just don't know that.
I think like the cost of getting those.
But what about the art? I mean, I'm a big fan of the live looking artificial tree.
Right.
Is that?
I think that's his like baseline platform. Okay. And then he's trying to appease some of the live tree folks by suggesting the palm tree is the replacement. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But always fun to chat with him, hear about his ballet adventures, all the different features of Nutcrackers these days and how they're working hard.
And also to really understand the way that people process nuts and which are the most popular nut varieties, various times of year. I was really surprised to learn that their busiest season is actually prior to Thanksgiving, and that pecans are, of course, the nut of choice because there's just a lot of pecan pie for Thanksgiving, more so than Christmas, which I always sort of thought of pumpkin as a Thanksgiving pie and pecan as Christmas. But people do have pecan at Thanksgiving, I guess. But I was just surprised that the volume of pecans that they're cracking is bigger in the lead up to Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it was a super informative interview. I learned a ton. But man, we've just had so many good guests, Sarah.
We really have.
It's pretty amazing how we started with just you and me on an iPhone.
Yeah.
All the way up to the pardoned turkeys fresh from the White House. And it's been an amazing year.
International interviewees. I'm pretty excited. It'll be interesting to see what 2025 brings.
I know. How can it get better? We'll have to wait and see.
Well, dear listeners, it has been a joy spending time with you on this New Year's Eve, whether you stay up till midnight or not, whether you watch the ball drop,
however you spend your New Year's Eve, thanks for spending part of it with us.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind, we'll think of days gone by, otherwise known as Old Lang Syne.
Hey y'all, Mary Beth here. Sarah and I are so glad that you chose to listen to our podcast. And while we think that we're awesome friends to have, we just wanted to clarify that we are not mental health professionals and want you to know that this podcast should not take the place of any paid professional advice.
Well, hello there, Andrea.
Hello, Miss Sarah. How are you?
I am doing well.
Oh my goodness.
You are here with me in the Trustworthy podcast studio.
I'm so honored.
Because you're at my house for Friendsgiving.
Oh my goodness. Best time ever.
So say something nice about the podcast because maybe I'll use this as a promo.
I love the Trustworthy podcast because it is real life from real people that teaches us how trustworthy our God is, no matter what situations we've been in or find ourselves in or will come.
I love it. Thank you very much.